Isabel teaches at universities and business schools in Europe, Nepal, Mexico, and founded consultancy and executive training business in Germany in 1996 with a master's in peace studies and an MBA. She earned her PhD in international relations and diplomacy from CETS in 2005. I would like to invite Isabel for a presentation about her book, Nepal, Zone of Peace.
I'll try the next. Would you please tell me if you can hear me in the back? If not, I will take a microphone. I don't like microphones.
Okay.
Yeah, I should. What do you say in the back? Yes, yes, I'll do it for you. When I enrolled for the course in peace studies at the University of Innsbruck in Austria, I was very interested in the Hindu Kush area and the drama that has been taking place over decades in using and abusing one of the most gorgeous places on earth with a tremendous tradition of spirituality as the theater for conflicts where people who suffer the most are those that have nothing to do with it. So initially I wanted to go to Kashmir and understand what was happening there. But in the course of the studies, a very nice young lady, my co-student, invited me to Nepal. And when I arrived in Tribhuvan University, I thought, wow, this is it. I was taken back by the amazing diversity, by, you can imagine 4 years ago, just coming out of the CPA, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, and what that meant and all the questions in people's heads. It was for a foreigner and for someone who's interested in conflict, someone who does not understand conflict and is interested in order to understand what it is all about. This place was a great inspiration because I was seeing so many people who, despite what had happened to the country, had the patience to smile, had the patience to welcome, and I thought, this is funny, I feel here so much peace. There must be such a tradition of peace here that even though what has happened in terms of revolution, rebellion, breaking through old systems, there is a thread through this civilization, through this culture, that is able to take violence and come out of it and still believe in peace, want peace, and work for peace. So the Nepalese people were my teachers, and I wanted to find as many people as I could to interview and learn from them. Please explain to me, how do you think, how do you think, how do you feel, why did you do it this way? And I tried to put that in a thesis, in the master's, and then in the PhD. I continued with Nepal, and that thesis has become the book. Now, I call it the Zone of Peace, revisited, because this idea, as you know, is an old idea, and actually all the ideas in the book are other people's ideas. I have done nothing new, except that I believe in them, and as a foreigner, I chose words that express my conviction that this country is a teacher of peace for the world, despite, and maybe because of, the incredible tension and self-destruction that has gone on for a while. But we know that this self-destruction was only itself a result of another structural destruction of a feudal system. So Nepal, the Zone of Peace, is a proposition. this proposition is that the idea of King Birendra is taken again and is used in today's context. It is also a proposition to take this idea into the constitution and embed it and enshrine it as a characteristic of the new Nepali state and the new Nepali nation that is to be formalized and institutionalized in the constitution. There are 12 chapters. I will run through them quickly, which is why I ask for your patience of about 55 minutes more, and the 12 chapters will be briefly explained. Firstly, King Birendra's zone of peace. This idea was a response to, in the 70s, a very critical state where King Birendra thought that his state was facing in view of the Cold War and the alliances between states and the annexations that were going on in South Asia. So here you have China and Tibet in 50-51. Here you have Sikkim in 71. Here you have Bangladesh forming from away from Pakistan. These are the Chinese tanks. Here you have the Treaty of Friendship between India and Russia. Here you have the problems and the three wars in Kashmir between Pakistan and India. And here you have the non-aligned movement conferences of states that decided not to side with either the USSR or the USA and to make a statement against colonization, imperialism, and not being neither the victims of, economically, politically, international relation-wise, of other more powerful nations that would dictate their economy and their economy. So, King Birendra in 1973 was in one of these conferences. It was in Alger, in Algeria, and he proposed the zone of peace because he did not like all that what was happening here, the Naxalite movement, and also at home with Pipi Koirala, they were, it was interpreting this as, in his time, as terrorism on his soil and against his regime, and this is the Smiling Buddha and Indira Gandhi visiting Gujarat where atomic bomb tests were being tests were being made. So King Birendra, in fear of all of this environment, proposed the zone of peace. And I may repeat his words. As heirs to one of the most ancient civilizations in Asia, our natural concern is to preserve our independence, a legacy handed down to us by history. We need peace for our security, we need peace for our independence, and we need peace for development. And if today peace is an overriding concern for us, it is only because our people genuinely desire peace in our country, in our region, and elsewhere in the world. It is with this earnest desire to institutionalize peace that I stand to make a proposition that my country, Nepal, be declared a zone of peace. You know that 116 countries agreed, and for reasons that you also probably know, India disagree because it was not in line with the treaty that had been done in the 50s and the secret letters later on. And Nepal was implicitly in the zone of security of India, and when India said no, Russia, that had just had a treaty of friendship with India, also said no. Now, the zone of peace today would not be in this context. There is no Cold War, and there are no secret alliances, and there is terrorism, there are a lot of problems, but they are of a different nature. The global context of a zone of peace is that the world is not at peace at all. For those that have done international relations theories and history, it is true we have fewer wars than before. and certainly a lot fewer wars between states, between sovereign nation states. There have been, after the 80s and 90s, a lot more intra-state wars and conflicts among tribes, among religions, Christians and Muslims in some countries, and we think of Sudan, we think of other places in Africa and also in Asia. But the global context is on peace and conflict is being studied so carefully, and peace studies at university programs are growing like mushrooms. There is a new generation that understands what is happening and is willing to couple their profession with peace, like starting a business that is making more peace in the world. Business studies and peace are now starting to be linked. Sociology and peace, anthropology and peace. So in the global context, on the one hand, wars have changed face and expressions. They have reduced, but if we think of Iraq and Afghanistan, many of us will have a smile on their faces. But also peace is definitely increasing intellectually and practically. The regional context, SARC, is very much improving, and SAFTA is really on the way, and the connectivity between the countries is definitely on the way. Nonetheless, there's still a long way to go, and the enmity, for example, between Pakistan and India is still dictating their relationship with one another on levels which they would do so well to collaborate. So the regional context is very important in having Nepal as a zone of peace. And of course the domestic context. After the comprehensive peace agreement, Nepalese people are hungry, are waiting, are thirsty to have the peace process really completed. And they have expectation of what it will look like, what it will feel like to be secure, to be safe, to have a feeling of brotherhood and sisterhood again among all the tribes and the castes and the nations. This domestic waiting for peace, the zone of peace would really help fulfill it. So the book presents or proposes 4 pillars of transformation. This is Nepal becoming a transit state. Again, not my idea. This has been around in Nepal for the last decade and very much clearly proposed 5 years ago in several books. I think there's also a book called The Transit State, or I'll come to that. Hydropower obviously is the waters of Nepal, hospitality and voluntary simplicity. I will come to that. Chapter 2, it was written as a thesis. It was written for a Western readership. I will go very quickly through this. It is your country. You will find in Portrait of Nepal probably the most mistakes on my part. However, I talk about the diversity, first of all in its natural environment and reflected in its human environment. Then I talk of the great capacity of the Nepali people of syncretism, or the tolerance of differences. I know that the 80% Hindu is of the census 2001. The census 2011 has just finished. We do not have the results yet. And we may expect the Hindu percentage to be significantly lower since the political changes. However, this is what the statistics still say today. So we have Buddhism and Islam and the Kirat or related religions, Christianity, a religion that is growing in Nepal, the Jains, the Sikhs, and the Baha'i faith. I think whatever it would be, as long as it is an honest, earnest desire to love God and serve God, no matter which way it takes a mantle or script, I think that the Nepali people generously would say, welcome, come and feel the divinity with us. We accept the way you do it. This is syncretism. This chapter also has a brief on history, starting with the mythological aspect, and then anthropologically the Kirats, and then the Hindus, Vicharis, Malas, the unifier of the modern state, and of course the beginning of the feudal age, which everywhere in the world, in all countries, as soon as you had a powerful house, you had inequity at the broad masses at the bottom. This happened in Russia, this happened in my country, France, it happened time and again everywhere. And the price for this is a much heavier load of poverty for an elite which has more or uses more than it needs. This happens. This is a human phenomenon, it's not just a Nepali phenomenon. So what happens? We will have a need after a while for this lack of equity and this abuse and this irreverence for our commonalities turns into anger, understandably, and then there are clever heads that take that anger and make it into a rebellion, a revolution. My country did it 4 times, so I know what I'm talking about. We had 5 republics, so it took us a while. It will take you much less time than it took France to reach that point. Anyway, this is what happens all the time. Then you have a rebellion in order to re-equilibrate the forces. And then people come at the table and say, let us stop hurting each other, let us find a system together. It doesn't mean that they will. It will take several years to do, because there is a lapse between the mind wanting something and the body following it. The mind is strong but the body is weak is a saying we have in the West, and that goes for the individual as much as the collective. And then you have a reconstruction of the state. This is one of 12 different propositions of a federation system. And you have disagreement among the parties. This is a map of Limbu 1. And you can imagine that Limbu 1 wants all the way to Japamo around Sutari, and that the Madhya region here does not. So you will have, even if you want consensus, you will have parties that have to come in the grassroots level to generous understanding and consensus among themselves. They will, it just takes time, which is why the Constitution takes so long. I do not think these people doing that are doing nothing, they are just dealing with the complexities and the deep level of conflicts in finding diversity in having as many people as possible satisfied with the solution. This is a very difficult thing to do at a national policy level after a period of shock. And then people after war, you have seen them everywhere. They want to smile again, they want to forgive. Very important work is the local peace committees. There are now in 74 districts, just one more district and then Nepal is complete. And this is having healing sessions and mediators, enabling people to take their conflicts in future in their own hands, including the tools and the instruments of conflict management by themselves. Very strong is Buddha, and the idea really that Buddha was born in this land. This is a land where the light of the world was created, or came as a teaching and in exemplary form, and still inspires us. I will pass this. We talked about the structural violence. Structural violence is, as I have said, is when you have an elite at the top, unable to redistribute the fruits of everybody's work to the workers at the bottom. This is obviously a Marxist thought to redress this, and Marxist thought is also to completely turn it upside down. Structural violence is discrimination, and it leads to direct violence sooner or later everywhere. There is structural violence in Greece. It is a member of the European community. It is, you would say, a richer country, but it has had structural violence. The finances have been misused. The youth now has no more allowance or ability to go into the universities as they did before. So, just like the youth here, what they do in Athens, time and again, is they go and burn cars and express their anger. Same in Paris, same in London, same everywhere. It is a phenomenon. So multiple transitions in Nepal, from monarchy to democracy, from the Hindu state ideology to secularism, etc. The key national programs were in the newspaper recently, and they are, I allow myself to make a judgment here, I think they are right on. This is exactly what needs to happen. But it is difficult. You can have a program, and then you will need the resources, and then you need implementation. It is difficult. I will say here a quote from President Yadav. He requested the assembly to lead the people towards prosperity by institutionalizing peace. Exactly the same words as King Birendra 3 decades ago, and many politicians, many leaders, welcome. We are glad to have you. Please sit down. Chapter 3 is Indo-Nepalese relations. I talked of a symbiosis. Symbiosis is a term from science. It means a close relationship between two organisms. You can have mutualism, which is a win-win situation. You and I working together, you learn from me, I learn from you. This is a win-win situation. It is a healthy symbiosis. Or you can have parasitism. This is a win-lose situation. I take from you as much as I can, but I don't give back so much, and I'm even planning to give as little as possible. This is parasitism. Commensalism is when there is a win, the other guy doesn't have as much, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't turn into hurt or hatred or anger. But it is a codependency, and we have situations in psychology, when we study psychology, of a typical alcoholic family. You have the woman, the man, it doesn't matter who, is a drinker, and the partner does not drink, but is in codependency by not stopping the other person from alcoholism, which is a disease. This is a psychological example. Now, a negative sum relationship, or parasitism, is when you have an organism living from the strength of another. For example, here the ivy on a tree. Or you have size, by being bigger, there is an immediate arrogance and abuse of the smallness of the other. You have this also in nature. If you have a cheetah needing a gazelle or a zebra to feed on, that is obviously a win-lose relationship for the gazelle. On the other hand, nature is clever collectively. It will make sure that all the cheetahs do not kill all the gazelles, otherwise the cheetahs will die. However, this is animal. Human beings are supposed to be more clever than just go along these routes. So a negative sum relationship is a dependency, is ruled by size, unquestionable power, and unequal deals. And also using, without telling you what I'm using, when I'm using it, why I'm using it. And by withdrawing information, this is abuse. Governments, groups, individuals, intellectuals, writers have often criticized India for being, due to its size, actually abusing Nepal. I am not here to make any judgment on this, but I have to look at this when we study the Nepal-India relationship. A positive sum relationship is when there is mutual usefulness, interdependency, shared power, and an appreciation This comes through behavior, appreciating what the other party is doing. Now, this is a bird that this crocodile is never going to snap and eat because the bird is extremely useful in cleaning its teeth. Let's take a milder animal. You here have a buffalo, and the buffalo also has the birds cleaning the nose and the ears and everywhere. This is from nature a positive sound relationship, or a win, do no harm. Obviously, friendship is the epitome of a positive sound relationship or a good partnership, also in business, when there is complementarity. Nepal-Indian ties, as you know, are incredibly close culturally, historically, and geographically. But there are symbiotic problems. This symbiosis, this closeness, to the extent that there is no recognition of when an act may actually damage the other, or if so will be criticized, will not be, may be seen but not cared for. Some of the symbiotic problems are not bad-willed at all. They are a consequence of the disparity of size and other elements. For example, the trade deficit. The trade deficit between Nepal and India is enormous. If we have to have a system and say, how can we reduce the trade deficit? How can we have export and imports be more in balance? This is going to take an enormous amount of brainstorming. And probably, I may be wrong, please somebody prove me wrong afterwards, it might not be possible. So we need to turn the symbiosis in another way. How can Nepal provide something that is unique? How can we make this relationship to a mutual advantage rather than be at the rather than have no choice. The idea of empowerment is having choice in a relationship, and this would be the part of the brainstorming to be done. Good neighborhood is obvious, not only people-wise, not only in the transit between the goods and the businesses and the foreign direct investment, but also in the aid that India, since the Colombo deal in the 50s, has continuously been a prime donor in grants and in loans to Nepal. So there is a lot of good neighborhood, and that needs to be recognized and appreciated, included in the brainstorming of how the new relationship can grow. Indian investment is also prime in Nepal. But Nepal needs to grow by itself. I needed a watch, and I went into Kathmandu and I asked the shopkeeper, can I please have a watch? And he presented me a few watches, and I said, good, I would like a Nepali watch, please. And he said, no, we don't have any Nepali watch. Where do your watches come from? They come from India. All of them? Yes, all of them. I wonder why there is no watchmaking factory that is Nepali. It is such a simple production. And you could have a little Nepali flag and all your diaspora and your non-residents would buy it. There are so many products that I see on the market that have total potential to be done in Nepal. So growth and earning respect really starts by growing one's own turf. So this growth, Nepal's growth, will aim at restoring some balance. You probably will say, well, wait a minute, it is incomparable in size, in power, in possibility. You are right. You are right. Nonetheless, it is the price to pay to earn this respect is to find what is unique about us that India will also respect and need and would pose some balance. And I say, I propose in the book, that being a zone of peace and being a place where the blue helmets are trained and being a place where conflict management is a comparative advantage here in Nepal and being the place where all the universities are teaching peace and are having international students come here to learn peace from a country, from people who have lived war, who have lived through the redefinition of their state. I say this is a comparative advantage. And if you have that, it may be that India today will say yes. That India today will say, we need a neighbor in the north that is so fragile. Your open border is so fragile. It is very important that you send a strong message of peace as terrorism from Afghanistan, my God, poor Pakistan might be, it needs to stop. But it needs to stop because there's a wave on the other side saying we want peace in South Asia, and Nepal stands up and say, and we will show the way. We haven't had much leadership in some ways in the past, but here we are going to take leadership. Here we are going to show that we say yes to peace, that we include it in the Constitution, and we are going to be peace teachers, as we were in ancient tradition and civilization so long ago. We are going to remember who we are. Chapter 4 talk about the Sino-Nepalese relations. Again, strong historical ties. You know all this. Explicit borders, so the particular difficulties with India are not to be seen with China, which is why the China card was used in order to counterbalance at times when Kathmandu did not feel that they were doing things to their advantage. A contributing neighbor, yes, roads and bridges, very much in infrastructure. The Chinese do that very much all over the world, and Africa also. In industry, in health, in education, a lot of cooperation. They're interested in setting factories, economic zone, special economic zone, SEZ, export economic zones. Now this is wonderful, and this is what strong neighbors are for. I allow myself in the book to say, please don't sell yourself either. It is fantastic to have two strong neighbors that want to trade with each other, that want to ask, and they have done so, asking Nepal to have a corridor to move goods and to be a transit zone. We will see that later. This is wonderful. But these transit places need to stay in Nepali hands. It's okay to have foreign direct investment. It's okay to have joint ventures, but the ownership of what is on Nepali soil, factories, if you have FDI, definitely needs to be very, very strong Nepali partner stakeholdership. Mr. Secretary, if you want to go, I know it's okay, but you tell me, and I give you the microphone. Interestingly, China, understandably, just like India, is involved in aid in armaments, in weapons. This is the way things go. And the military aid, it's called military aid from China, is almost equal to the other amount of aid in terms of dollars or in rupees. So the Chinese they're interested in everything. They're interested in restaurants. You might see more Chinese restaurants opening in Kathmandu. They're interested in bringing Chinese to travel here. They're interested in connectivity, in roads, and so on. So the trade and the deals with the Chinese, just like the Indians, will require a lot of negotiation skills in order to say, yes, we need you, yes, we thank you for investing so much, and we are learning as a zone of peace to affirm ourselves and negotiate in a position of strength we may not have had it before, and we might not have to the degree that you have, but we have our own strength. So the deficit balance of trade is also very large with China. In 4 years I have been here, I have seen products that were Nepali on the market and in the stalls gradually disappear, and I see the Chinese product. Every time I come here, every 6 months, I see more and more. This is what happens. This is what happens in the globalized or in the regionalized world, and I think it needs to be thought about really carefully. Chapter 5 talks of the transit state. There was a reframing done by the Institute of Foreign Affairs when they had, in 2005, a conference, and they called from landlocked to land-linked. What a beautiful reframing. And thanks to them, this is really helping us to reconsider, oh my God, I cannot, I am enclosed, and by the way, why don't we? Yeah, it's reframing is an excellent tool for discovering new alternatives and new possibilities. For example, here, the yam between the two boulders, sandwiched between two giants, which is true, which is absolutely true. If we reframe it, we might find a bridge between two neighbors. So playing with words also helps reconceptualize a relationship and gives us alternatives. Okay, roads are being built every day, more and more. It is about transversal roads as well as vertical ones. Here you have going to the north, and this is going into China, Tibet, China. This is a place of transit in India, which you will recognize. India and China have asked explicitly, formally, Nepal to be a transit zone, and the FNCCI, the Federation of Nepali Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as well as an array of other associations and groups and strategists are thinking of how to have the economic zones and how to have the export zones. The Chinese are helping, the Europeans are helping, the Indians are helping to conceptualize these things. It is good, and that is definitely a good card for Nepal. There will be people who don't like it, understandably, and I hope the environmentalists will come strongly into the stakeholdership and say all these trucks going up the mountains with all these fuel emissions is not possible, nature is going to die. They are right, so we need to think of alternative ways, maybe trains, maybe other type of vehicles, but going through Nepal to help the transit in the region is definitely a strength, a future card, and something to take. Now, if Nepal is a zone of peace, goods will travel in peace. There will be a peace police at the borders, and it will not be, and there will be a security element embedded in the trade deals themselves, in the transit between the firms, the association organizations and governments and ministries of transport and trade. Already in the deals will be, this is a peace route, and we are carrying goods for the good of civilization, like in very, very former times, the Silk Road. So we can imagine this is for water going to Bangladesh. Here is gas. This is a map of Central Asia. Dream on, but just 2 generations away, when we're gone, what will do our grandchildren? I think they will need a lot of water and they will need a lot of energy. So we're probably other generations that thinks of how to make that environmentally possible and economically sustainable, and make sure that some regions, such as Nepal, do it with a lot of value with a lot of human value, with a lot of ethical principles. Connectivity is the word. It is the decade of connectivity in South Asia right now. We need routes that cover all the capitals. And our job is to make it so that the environment does not suffer from that. So we will need a lot of engineering. Nepal will need a lot of engineering, managers of depots and accountants and specialists in transportation. This is a new area of, this is a new economic sector. And if the universities would target their bachelors and their masters to the becoming of Nepal in the next 10 years, so that this youth is being educated to have the jobs that will be needed. So that this is the ownership also, is when the Nepali people have the knowledge to run these economies that are coming, because they are coming sooner or later. So owning and managing the transportation systems, the entrepôts, the logistics centers, as well as the commercial, administrative and technological services that support this. This is a task that needs to happen. And we need intellectuals, we need engineers, we need educators that are preparing for that. We also need diplomats, economic diplomats, that are going to have negotiating skills, particularly with India and China, to affirm that, yes, Nepal has the competence to deal with this, and we will work with the neighbors and we will invite their expertise, but we will not give it away. Okay. Now the guardian of the blue water. Obviously, the number one resource is water. And hydropower has only been possible through the help of the neighbors. This is a fact, and this is a reason to be thankful and to appreciate. But again, to turn the symbiosis into a new phase of the relationship. 6,000 rivers or 60,000 so many rivers. It is part of the entire region, the Hindu Kush and all the arteries of the planet. We say in Brazil that the forest of Brazil is the lungs, the breathing forests, and the arteries are here also in What is this the concept of guardianship? If you are the guardian of something, it is yours, but only to the extent that it can be yours as a property, but it has a responsibility to care for it for the benefit of another person or another group, and in this case of humanity. The concept of common good is also present in the United Nations philosophy, our common goods and the common heritage of mankind. And you see where I'm driving at is I am suggesting that the waters are the common heritage of mankind also. And of course you will say, no, they are our waters, they are Nepalese waters. And you are right. Except that they are being harnessed through the intelligence and money and technology of other people also. So there is a pro and a con and a controversy and a dilemma at every level of the discussion. What I suggest is if the waters of Nepal could be under a superior guardianship concept or stewardship, so that it would be Nepal that decides if the hydropower commercialization and the use of the waters are really good for Nepal, for India, for Bangladesh, for everyone. And would be in a, if you like, a super consortium, maybe of other waters, such as in Brazil. And all of these waters would be absolutely like land, the property of the sovereign state of Nepal, the responsibility and the power of negotiation in commercial and other areas would be by the Nepalese or the Nepali government. I don't think that that exists yet. The closer that you can have in this idea are national parks, maybe global national parks. They belong to the land of a sovereign country, but that country has decided to keep this area for future generations forever, and to serve nature and to care for nature forever. So this is the idea. It needs to be deepened. I cannot go into detail. I think just a brief introduction is enough. Okay, there are so many conflicts about water. I have many examples, but I will pass on. The main message is the rivers are not for sale. But in our age of Homo economicus, man, woman, with a brain of counting advantages in financial terms and having that as a driver of our civilization even more than our values, the rivers are going to be used and abused. If there was a concept that was superior with very high ethics, it may be that while we are still commercializing it, while we are still harnessing this number one resource of Nepal for other people, the spirit and the implementation follows a policy based on this own peace. Chapter 7 in hospitality. I give in the book some experiences I have had as a foreigner and as a visitor of amazing kindness, incredible welcome, and generally a closeness of heart between people that I have seldom felt in other countries I have been. I didn't say tourism, I said hospitality. Tourism is a sector, it's an economic sector, and obviously very important, it needs to grow. I said hospitality because this is where the zone of peace comes in. In your sector, tourism, at the heart, you have this beautiful Nepali soul saying, Namaste, welcome. You are Nepali, you cannot appreciate what this picture, I have it on my wall in my office in Germany, what this picture does to me when I look at it every day. It is the beauty of his eyes, this openness, you can see the soul in the eyes of his child. This is a strength. This is a comparative advantage. If tourism could really include the zone of peace and say, when you come and visit my country, you will be at peace. We will show you the beauty of our nature, but not just so that you spend rupees in our hotels. We will also show you our heritage, our spiritual heritage, and you will remember who you are as a human being, no matter where you come from, or your race, or your color of skin. If that is a strength, and it already is, even more, and you make that a comparative advantage in your tourism industry. I know people like me are hungry in the West. We have lost ourselves in ego. We no longer know what the soul is. We no longer know how to open our hearts before we calculate how the other one is going to react. We have lost our spontaneity. We come here in a poor country and we remember who we are. So bank on that. I assure you it is very appreciated. Chapter 8 is about voluntary simplicity. This is a concept by Ewan Elgin. He himself was the author, was taking concepts of his time, of the 80s. It was in the United States when people were buying more than they needed by the tenfold. Buying and needing, eat as you go. You don't even need to be hungry. Just go to the next McDonald's. Eat and eat and eat. Okay, you have a car. Okay, the man has a big car. The wife has a smaller car. And the child who is now 18 and now who's 16 in the States, you can have a third car. Why not have just lots of cars? Let's have lots of everything as long as we are consuming. The country will be better economically. This is homo economicus, like really on an extreme of the continuum. And this gentleman said, stop this. Stop wanting. Stop eating when you're not hungry. Stop wanting more when you have enough. And the concept of sufficing, it is okay when you have enough, so that others will have at least a little. We are unaware when we overconsume that we are actually unconsciously, collectively somewhere else, removing the possibility for someone else to consume their true needs. So in this chapter, I am suggesting, through a couple of instruments, that this coming middle class in Nepal, which is a noble phenomenon, where globalization has come in and businesses are picking up after the insurgencies, and the remittances are coming in, and there is in Kathmandu, we can see, much more money than before. I am proposing in this chapter that there is a consensus that when enough is enough, so that the other Nepalis in other places that have deeply suffered from rebellion do not see what is going on in Kathmandu or in Pokhara or in centers of upliftment, economic upliftment, and still haven't understood what's going on anyway, and are still suffering from deficiency and maybe lack of fulfilling their needs. That there is a consensus and an agreement between the haves and the have-nots in Nepal. So you will see that in the chapter. In chapter 9, I talk about the relation between a zone of peace and politics. I do not talk of the political system in Nepal because I feel totally not capable of doing that, and I do not want to do that. But in terms of international relations perspective, there is realism and idealism. And for the realists, a zone of peace is the guarantee of peace under very strong rules. It is the absence of violence in the street. It is the absence of gangsters using the vacuum right now and passing weapons through the border and doing what they're doing. A zone of peace would be the guarantee of a well-trained and stable police force and armed police force and border police that would guarantee the security and the safety of the citizens. In idealism, peace is like positive peace, if you like. This is when people genuinely, subjectively have a peaceful heart. You can see that on their face. It shows in the face when somebody is peaceful. You cannot take that away. You can, unfortunately. You can create fear. You can put jealousy and emotions and destroy somebody's peace. But otherwise, somebody who has a strong peace and is an idealist believes that peace is a phenomenon inside oneself, and if it is shared, it can be collective. So whether you are a realist or an idealist, A zone of peace would serve both, which is why I argue for this as in this chapter, and citing Kant, Gandhi, and others. Globalization and localization, just like also in the newspaper and the programs that your leaders have produced last week, it was in the newspaper, very strongly a return to the villages. Oh, have we not heard that before? Back to the village. You know, obviously, a village-centered nation needs to go back to the village. But every time with a renewed effort, and now with more intelligence, with more technology, with more education. Chapter 10 says that if Nepal was a zone of peace, it would be incredibly beneficial for SAARC. It would be an incredibly strong message for India. It would be, Sri Lanka has a lot of conflict management and peace studies. It has worked out its own conflict with the Tamil rebels for so long. It is now an expert. And Nepal is also becoming an expert in conflict management. Working on itself. What happened to us? What did we do? How can constantly working. This is going to be a fruit. There's going to be competence. There's going to be intelligence after all this work. And this, just like Sri Lanka, is very helpful to SAARC right now in these issues and is becoming a teacher. Nepal will be as well. And that will help Pakistan and Afghanistan in the long term. If Nepal was a zone of peace, it would be recognized as such by the United Nations. The suggestion is that Nepal is also a training ground for peacekeepers. First of all, Nepal gives a fourth. Balananda is not here today. Never mind. It's it. I think it's him in his paper, he said, fourth or fifth. Contributed to the peacekeepers. Balam himself was a retired general and now is heading the technical commission for the reintegration of the Maoist combatants. And along with other retired Gorkha members of the Gorkha forces, there is a great interest in possibly expanding the training grounds that already exist for the police force and the armed police force to include being a training ground for the Blue Helmets. Maybe not at a world level. There is already one in Italy. Italy, quite a lot financed by the United States of America, training the Blue Helmets in Europe. Maybe to start with, or maybe only for SAARC. There is a training center in Africa where you have the African nations also being trained as Blue Helmets. Nepal has a legacy of martial discipline. The Gorkha legacy and the Blue Helmet legacy, and there is a profound capacity for Nepali people to serve. There is a desire to be humble and serve a good cause. This has been said time and time again in all the regiments, if we are talking about the armed forces. Now, in the world, there's going to be, we can expect through the climate change and through the difficulties of the overpopulation, water is going to be scarce, there is more desertification, more deserts, there's more youth and less jobs. The planet is not going to be easy to manage. The next generation will need a lot of help. And Europe has now reached its climax of richness. It is now not as, it is now declining. Our youth also in Europe do not have enough work. So, or an astronomer
but I know basically that some planets come back. There are comets, some good ideas that just come back. And once, twice, they are not heard, they don't have a chance. And then they come back and then it is the right chance. This is also called a word in English, serendipity. Not an easy word to say. What it means is a good alignment of planets